Hi, everybody. Welcome to this incredible special episode of the Clonestar podcast. I am your host, Mike Overton. Joining me in my co-host seat this week is my dear friend, Mike number 2, Mike Goodwill. How are you, Mike?
I am very, very excited, Mike number 1.
And I'm now joined by a Mike number 3, which is the legend himself, Mike McMahan. Mike, thank you so much.
Hello, Mike.
Hey!
Thanks for having me. I brought Kayshawn with me. He's a puppet. We're not supposed to play with him though.
I think you can get away with that, can't you?
I think I'm one of the few people who's allowed to play with puppet. If in Starfleet you're turned into a puppet, there's only a couple people who are allowed to still wiggle you around. I'm one of them.
Mike McCann is one of them. Perfect. So jumping straight in then, Lower Decks obviously has a very distinct comedic tone. How did you strike the balance between playing homage to Star Trek lore and creating something that's obviously fresh and funny?
Sometimes we would find in the edit what was making sense. Like, I didn't know that we were going to bleep all the swears all the time when we started, but like, I almost have these like sort of gut check internal rules about what feels like the kind of Star Trek that speaks to me and what works. You know what I mean? So like, there's been times where we've really, really asked a lot of the audience, like when the two Mugatos are fucking each other on the log and our boys are like stuck inside. Cause like, it's weird. It's like a lot of people are like, no, there can't be sex jokes in Star Trek. And it's like, well, tell that to Data and his fully functionalness. You know what I mean? Like, we're not the first people to make any of these kind of, Star Trek's always been funny, right? Yeah. Like I've said that a million times, and Star Trek gets to decide whether it's lighthearted, whether it's serious, you know what I mean? Like, but Star Trek has characters you love. So I knew that if we had characters that we loved and that we felt like that we were following all the rules, like,
yep,
that we were following the rules of Starfleet. I was already asking people to believe that there was a ship in the California class, like the things that I was asking, and to watch an animated show on top of it being a comedy, like, the more we had to ask from the audience, the more we had to absolutely make sure we were playing within a limited sandbox and world. Yep. Because at that point, I always told everybody, if I didn't love playing in this world, we could just call it Star Black and it would be a parody instead of this thing that it was, this different thing. You know what I mean? And what's been for sale at Lower Decks has never been, ooh, look, remember this? You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be real for the characters, and you have to see how things that we love impact them. It's almost like wish fulfillment. You know what I mean? Like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if we were in Starfleet, or wouldn't it be interesting to see what people in Starfleet, how they would react to having read the logs and heard the stories of these interesting people. And, I think that the dialing up and down of the comedy, like I came from Rick and Morty, where it was like, you could just do huge laughs and you could be dirty and like, but at the same time, Rick and Morty aired on television. It wasn't streaming. So technically, if you go and watch Solar Opposites, I can do really fucked up stuff on Solar Opposites. You know what I mean? Like, and what I loved about Lower Decks is like how to tell stories that walked right up to the line but never crossed it, and obviously it's all subjective, and some people would agree and some people wouldn't, but I'm really proud of just getting to have an awesome time, and full of jokes, full of funny moments, beautiful animation, but Star Trek through and through. Like, it was really hard, but like so worth it. I don't know. A long answer to an easy question. Sorry. I don't know.
So how did you decide which established Star Trek characters or species to bring into Lower Decks without overshadowing the main cast?
So at first there was stuff that I was like, oh, I want one of the main cast to be an Orion. I knew that from the pitch, because I loved Orions, but I'd never been 100% satisfied with who we knew of Orions, what characters we knew of Orions, and how we had defined them on a planetary level. Like, I also wasn't the biggest fan of like Orions are strippers that can control you with their sex pheromones. Like, episodically, fine. Like, but on a series wide level, Orions are so iconic. I was like, give me a crack at that and giving you another Orion. You know what I mean? And I really love having a scientist who's an Orion, and I love Noelle and how she plays Tendi. And then every once in a while somebody would be like Jennifer the Andorian. I love Andorians, and we had the line "Get out of the way, Jennifer" when Mariner's running through a hallway, and the artist chose to make that an Andorian officer. And I was like, well, hold on, I love that. Let's tell more stories about her. Wage Douge was a big one where I wanted to bring in Klingons and Vulcans and say stuff about them we hadn't seen. And, then there's personal things like I love the episode Quality of Life. So, of course, an Exocomp is going to show up. I have a love-hate relationship with Samaritan Snare. You know what I mean? So, like, of course, Packlets have to be talked about. Yeah. I really like to bring in original animated series species that wouldn't ever be in live action, like Bem and or like Caitians, which you see a little bit in the movies. So it was always a balance. And then for Legacy Cast, like the actual characters, not just the species, it was like, okay, we're having a blast. These guys are part of the party. You know what I mean? Like this party's going to be bumping if Riker's here, but I never wanted to do it like a circus clown. Like, oh, look, everybody clap because Riker showed up. Now he's going to leave. You know what I mean? Like, it was really important to me that like the characters were both a funny version of themselves and made sense in the story and the timeline. So there's always little things that like, there's no moment where a Legacy character shows up that breaks anything from what they had created within their shows previously. Like if you've never seen Lower Decks, it doesn't break anything from before. It's like I say it's like treat it like going to a national park. Like enjoy it while you're there, but don't carve your name in a tree. You know what I mean? And like every once in a while, like, oh, I started Ferenginar into the process of joining the Federation, right? Because it felt like a natural extension of the stories we saw with Rom that felt worth doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a million different reasons and ways that people come in, what Legacy Cast or species and stuff like that, and it's always a huge conversation. And is this going to be awesome? And is it going to make sense? And and then we go from there.
So sorry, Mike, number 2, I'm going to throw in the question order out the window just because I'm looking at time. Were there any deliberate Easter eggs or references in the final season that longtime fans might easily miss? And what is your favorite Easter egg from Lower Decks? And that's all 5 seasons.
There are going to be some things that people will miss. There's people like Jorg on German George on Twitter who seems to catch everything.
Jorg gets everything.
And I'm like, we'll be putting together a trailer and I'm like, have them reanimate these frames. And I'm like, why? And I'm like, German George is going to get us on this. But at the same time, like there's stuff that he hasn't noticed either. That's like, I'm hoping people just figure out. Like there's some jokes that only the prop guy on Voyager would get. Do you know what I mean? Like there's things that are like deep, but you're not missing them. They're part of the general pastiche of Trek that I liked, that are like, Lower Decks isn't a Where's Waldo. I mean, you can treat it like that, but like, it's really just the world of it. It just treats the world of production of Star Trek as if it's a real world, which I liked, which felt good, Yeah. And then my favorite deep cut is in the first movie episode where Mariner says, he's a bit of a Zon, like I think that it's the phase 2 references that's breaking the fourth wall a little bit, where it's crazy that in a movie episode, Mariner would know about a character that never was on a show, but you know what I mean? Like that's because we all read the 50-year history of the interview books of the history of all of the different Star Trek, and there was so much in there that every once in a while I'd be like, I'm putting that in. You know what I mean? So that one was for me. And yeah, I don't know. That's getting to work with Shannon Phil was amazing too. Like she like that she's not an Easter egg. I would never call anybody an Easter egg, I guess. But like of legacy folks, like getting to work with her for the first time since she played that character, she hadn't acted since then. Like,
yeah.
And then having her come in and her blowing us away was like, this is crazy. You know, like this is amazing. And we had to literally hunt her down. Like she didn't have reps. Like we paid for her to join SAG again so that she wouldn't have to. Like it was a whole process. And I'm really proud we did it because like it's amazing on screen, but it was an amazing experience to have. You know what I mean?
Proper bucket list moment.
Yeah, yeah. Like you go to a convention, you see these folks, and it's amazing. But you're not allowed to hunt them down in their personal lives unless you're making a Star Trek. Otherwise, you're just a weird.
No,
don't hunt them down.
Just have to wait for the restraining orders to come in.
Leave them alone unless you're making a Star Trek, and that's not as bad.
Do you want to go for the TOS question?
I really do. Mike, Those Old Scientists has been heralded as one of the best Star Trek episodes in the last 25 years. I am wearing Those Old Scientists version of the Lower Decks.
You put the comm badge in the right spot.
Yes, so much effort. If you had the chance again, which series of Star Trek would you love the Lower Decks crew to visit?
Oh, I mean, it's so tempting to have them cross over into the Trouble with Tribbles at the same time as the Deep Space Niners. That's an easy. I mean, I've said that before. I've seen people on the internet say that. Like, it seems like a way to one up it, you know, and in a very funny way. I wouldn't mind them crossing over with the original animated series, you know, and mucking around in there a little bit. I tried really hard to get us to cross over with the Kelvin folks and like, you know, do something with Chris Pine. And like, I thought that would be because like I call Lower Decks like a Rosetta Stone of Trek. Like if you only have Lower Decks, you can kind of figure out what the rest of Trek is sort of like, you know? And I feel like we have put in some stuff from Kelvinverse, but we've never fully been able to kind of like do what I wanted to do with it. So I guess that's the answer. That's the answer.
If you had unlimited budget and time, were there any wild story ideas or storylines for the final season that you wish you could have pursued?
I mean, not in the final season, but I had like a 7-year plan, a 10-year plan. You know what I mean? Like it was sort of like there were like, you know, there were things I wanted to do that only would work and feel good if you could slowly do it over episode. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't anything like mind blowing. It was just like character arcs and journeys and stuff. And then I think like I would love to do a big animated movie, like a big, see it in theaters and it feels worth seeing it. And it's like, you know, that it's like the dream. It's like a dream Star Trek movie, but it also happens to be fun and funny. And like, it's a thing you would have to see in theaters, like to get the feeling of, because I've kind of emulated that a couple times. Like, obviously I love Star Trek movies, but it's different sitting in a theater with a crowd versus watching it on a screen at home. Yeah. I love watching the episodes. Like we just screened an episode this year and we did last year at New York Comic Con, and watching a Star Trek episode in a room of a couple thousand people is awesome. Like it's just freaking awesome, you know? And like, I was on strike last year for San Diego Comic-Con where we screened the crossover episode. And like, that was in Hall H. That's like 7,000 people watching the crossover episode. God, I wish I'd been there for that. Like, that's insane, you know? So I don't know. Yeah. There's kind of like, look, weirdly, it's a badge of honor. Like our Star Trek show is easily the cheapest of all the Star Trek shows that have been airing in the last 30 years or whatever. But like you take that and you look at like TOS and it's like, well, yeah, that's why they came up with beaming. It's because they couldn't afford shuttles every episode. You know what I mean? And it's like Star Trek has always had that problem. Like I love that Patrick Stewart was the only one on the set of First Contact who was allowed to touch the missile because it was a real missile. Like, and he was the only one the government would allow to have him put his hand on it. You know what I mean? Like, so
because he's British.
Because he's British, and British people can't set off missiles with their hands like Americans can. But anyway, but yeah, if I had infinite budget, what I would do is get to keep working with my friends, get to keep working with the actors, get to keep working with all of my artists and my directors, and I would just keep this party going. That's the real answer.
Okay, just because I'm just looking at time. So one last question then. Mike McMahan, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Star Trek is the show you put on because they're your family and friends, but they're also the way you want to see the world. And it's how you find friends in real life. It's your comfort zone, but it's also challenging and surprising. And it's the thing that is perfect TV. It's good movies. It's pretty good games, and it's perfect TV. And I think like there's something about inviting TV into your house that like the best TV shows feel like when you're at the end of your day, now you're going to hang out and watch the thing that makes you happy, that makes you feel something and doesn't challenge you. And some TV shows challenge you, and that's really cool. But to me, spending time with your friends, whether they're the cast of Friends or The Office or Star Trek, like there is something really communal about that in a way that speaks to me on like a very kind of human level, and that Star Trek does that, but also that it has a baseline of respect, whether you're an alien or a human or you're black or you're white or a man or a woman or whatever race you are or whatever, that like, people talk about Star Trek being about science, but it's really not. It's about respect and about our the casual acceptance of everybody around you, and that you'll explore together, and that what does it mean to be human, and that being emotional is a benefit and not a fault. You know what I mean? That like, I think a lot of people who aren't Star Trek fans think that Star Trek feels like homework, and the sneaky thing is that Star Trek can look like homework, but it actually is the most fun, and it's got the most fun characters in it. Like, look, I like Star Wars, but there's like, I can count on one hand my favorite Star Wars characters. There's a reason, like, and again, I love Star Wars, but like some of the most popular things in Star Wars are non-speaking helmets. You know what I mean? Like, it's Star Wars has amazing design, and it's fantasy, and it's fun, and it's mythological, but there's like 50 characters across Star Trek that I would kill to drink a beer with and hang out with. Like, on any one show, it's hard to not love a half dozen characters, and like, to me, Star Trek is all those things, and it's stuff we haven't even seen yet. And I don't know, it's just really great.
Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for Moopsie.
Yeah, the Moopsie.
Thank you for Moopsie.
Moopsie is the greatest creature in the universe.
I'll tell you guys too, I know teeth aren't bones. It was just funny, okay?
I don't care.
Just relax. You don't know maybe the Moopsie likes to eat, other stuff other than bones. Just calm down.
It's fine. We're going to have a Moopsie conversation with Meg at some point in the next couple of weeks. So it'll be fine. For everyone watching at home, thank you so much for joining us. But until next time, live long and prosper.